Right, let's start with Python today. I wanted to take up Python in the very beginning because this is one of the most important skills in data science as well as data analytics. And this is also one of the upcoming skills. I'll not be surprised if Python remains the most important data science skill even after 5 years, right? Yes, I'll share the slides after today's session. I'll share the combined slides of yesterday's and today's session. So don't worry about that. We'll not be having a session tomorrow. We'll be having a session next week, next weekend basically, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, something like that. Right. I have so I think I'll now close the poll. I have seen your responses. Most of you are from the first year itself. I have 160 students from the first year, 90 students from the second year, and about 40 odd other students, which means that I'm assuming most of you do not have significant expertise in Python, right? Um, all right. So let's start with the applications. First, let me tell you where is Python used? Can anyone identify this picture? Can anyone identify the picture on the right side? Which movie is this?
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Perfect, perfect.
Millennium Falcon.
Millennium Falcon.
This is yes, yeah. This is Star Wars, and on the left side is how it is filmed, how this scene was filmed, right? And now try to understand that from going from here to here, there's a lot of things required: special effects, animation, all those visual effects, a lot of creativity, a lot of things are involved. And for all behind all those visual effects, all those special effects, which can be in terms of audio, lighting, the visual effects, all of those special effects, Python is in play here. Behind all those special effects is Python, right? So this wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have the computational power that Python brings along with it. Not only this particular scene, right? Not only movies in general, but all the fan companies, then Instagram, Dropbox, Spotify, Reddit, Quora, all the top companies in the world, they utilize Python. If you tell me that there's a huge company in the world and it's not using Python, I'll be very, very surprised. But how are these companies using Python? So for example, Google makes extensive use of Python in its web search system. So when you're seeing the rankings, right, Google search rankings, and when you're seeing there's a lot behind the web search system. There are keywords, there's SEO, there's SCM, there are lots and lots of things. So behind all of that, behind this web search system is Python. The web search system is coded in Python. For if I were to give you another very good example, the YouTube video sharing system is largely written in Python. And another interesting example is Netflix. Yelp is a service in the US, and it's a very, very famous service. Yelp and Netflix have both documented the role of Python in their software infrastructures, which means that they have mentioned specifically what the role of Python has been in their entire software infrastructure. Might be the recommendation system that Netflix has built, might be the recommendation or the feed kind of system that Yelp has built. So there are lots of possibilities where Python can come into picture. NASA also uses Python for specific programming tasks. Now, NASA is one of the most advanced organizations in the world. In fact, I would say that it is the most advanced organization. I might not be wrong in saying this because behind space tech, there's a lot of computation, there's a lot of maths and stats. So Python is again helpful there. And then Dropbox storage service codes both its server and client software. Now, server and client software, people might not relate to this because this is a software engineering, these are software engineering terms. But you just need to understand that Python as a language is used in a lot of companies, in all the huge companies, in all the big companies of the world. What is Python? Python is an object oriented programming language. Now, just allow me to pause here and move to this. What are object oriented programming languages? I'll move to the other characteristics of Python later on. Let me first take up object oriented programming concepts. Now, this is, I think, if I were to rank the top 10 interview questions in the software engineering industry, this would be one of those concepts. So, OOP concepts or object oriented programming concepts are four in number. The first one being encapsulation, second one is data abstraction, then is polymorphism and inheritance. So encapsulation helps us to encapsulate the data and the code together. We are binding the code and the data together, right? Very simple. We're just trying to bind the code and the data together. And basically, we have Python class, a Python class. You might not know what a class is, but you'll get to know that very soon. So a Python class is an example of encapsulation. Then we have data abstraction. We are just basically we are hiding the details that we do not want the world to see. When you are using the Google web search system, you're not able to see the code, right? How has it been coded? So we are trying to abstract. We are hiding the implementation of the code from the world, and we are just providing only the required details, right? Even if you go to the developer version or the debug version, inspect element, lot of things are there. You'll not be able to see the implementation, the code. You'll be able to see only the required details that are there. Then we have polymorphism. It is the ability to take multiple forms. Now we have animals that are known as polymorphs, right? They can take multiple forms. For example, a chameleon can take multiple colors. So it is the ability to take multiple forms. Similarly, um, if you know the fourth, I'll not move to the example here. We'll take up the fourth concept, that is inheritance. It allows, so inheritance is a very easy concept, right? Your parents have you will be inheriting the huge wealth of your parents and whatever there is. So essentially, inheritance is a very simple concept where one class gains all the members, all the specific parts of another class, right? Suppose there's a superset that has all the members of all its subsets, right? Similarly, in Python or in OOP concepts, we have a super class instead of a superset. This is the class. This is like a parent, right? You are inheriting something from your parents. So this is the class from which we are inheriting something. And what are you in this process? You are the child class or the derived class. It is the class that is inherited, that inherits basically, if I were to put it that way. uh, I'll move back to this slide because we were covering the basics of Python. uh, Objects, what are objects? Now this is, I've talked about object oriented language. These are the four characteristics of an object oriented language, four OOP concepts. What is an instance of a class? Objects are instance of a class. Basically, a class is like a I think if you have coded at some point of time, you will relate to this. A class is like a set which includes all your code, right? Suppose I have written a very simple piece of code for multiplying two numbers. I will enclose that piece of code in a class. That is a class. And an instance of a class, when we are to use that class, or when we are to bring that class into application, when we are to apply that class, that is the time we use concepts. So we use objects. So objects are instances of a class. Another very important concept is that Python is dynamically typed. We don't need to state the types of variables when we declare them. So no, we write int a, say for example, suppose I want to store a number in C, Java, I write int a equal to 10, right? But in Python, we don't need to write int. Int is basically the data type. What is the type of data that we are storing, right? What is a data type? A data type is the type of data that we are storing. So if I were to write, I'll write that in the chat box. Int a is equal to 10. uh, this is basically int is integer. So it is the data type. Int a is equal to 10. So I'm defining the data type. Uh, I'm defining the data type of this number. So of this variable, sorry, a is a variable. So I'm defining the data type of this variable a as int. But in Python, we don't need to write int. We can simply write a is equal to 10, and that will work. Python will automatically understand what is the type of the data. I think this is clear, and this is very important, believe me. So Python is dynamically typed. We don't need to state the type of the variable. What is the variable here? It is a. A is the variable. So we don't need to write int before a. But in all other languages like C, C++, Java, we need to write int. We need to write the data type before the variable. I think this is clear. Let's move to other characteristics of Python. Python provides interfaces to all major commercial databases. Now you can use SQL, you can use Hadoop, you can use a lot of stuff within Python. You can connect databases with Python. That's another very useful characteristic of Python. And the one which I find the most useful is machine learning. Python has libraries which serve as inbuilt modules for running models, for building and running models. So basically, I can build a machine learning model very easily in Python because I don't need to write the code and code again and again. Python stores the code as modules, right? What is the library that stores the code as modules? One of those very famous libraries is scikit-learn, is sklearn basically, sklearn. This is scikit-learn. This is a library that helps you implement machine learning models, that helps you build machine learning models, right? Now, this particular slide has around 5 to 7 important interview questions, right? And I have a separate dedicated section for that, but you just need to be very clear on this. If there are any questions, feel free to write them in the chat box. So I'll just quickly recap. Python is an object-oriented language. There are 4 object-oriented language concepts. These are encapsulation, data abstraction, polymorphism, and inheritance. Then objects are instances of a class. And then Python is dynamically typed. We are not defining the data type in front of each and every variable in Python. Then Python provides interfaces to all major databases, and Python has libraries which help us implement machine learning. And scikit-learn is a very famous library. This helps you to go for machine learning, to build machine learning concepts, models, sorry, to help you build machine learning models. Okay, I'll take up the questions now. What is a database? A database is it helps you organize information, and it's very simply it's like tables. It's like a set of tables with rows and columns. So it helps you keep your information more organized. That is a database. Suppose you have the data of uh, the past prices of houses in your hometown in Delhi, say for example. So the prices of houses in Delhi for the past 10 years, all that will be stored in a database, right? That's an example of a database. And then I think people are trying to understand the meaning and use of OOP. So see, OOP is object-oriented programming language, as I've already told you. This means that this is a concept that is based on objects, and objects are instances of a class. Now I'm going into programming here. I'm going a bit deep into programming here, and I don't want to do that. But I just want you to understand what are OOPS concepts and the definition of each of those 4 concepts. Okay, you want me to explain polymorphism? So polymorphism is basically when your code can take multiple forms, when your class that you have created or the code piece of code that you have created that can take multiple forms. You can explore the internet for more examples. You can do some research here, but very simply, it is when your code can take a number of other forms. Um, OOPS is not compulsory for data science as it if I were to put it that way. I think it's not compulsory, but it is one of the most important. It is one of the important interview questions. Like you can skip this, but it will be helpful if you know what are OOPS concepts. Um, OOP and normal. See, this is not a this is not like programming. This is a concept on which your languages like Python and Java are based. Java is also an object oriented programming language. So when we are coding in Java or when we are coding in Python, we use these object oriented concepts. So the code is based on these four concepts. You'll not find encapsulation in C or C++, right? You'll not find encapsulation or data abstraction in C or C++ or polymorphism or inheritance. You'll not find these four in C or C++ because those are not object oriented programming languages, right? Um, all right. I think we can move to the next one. Scikit-learn. You must understand that scikit-learn is a Python library that helps you to build and run machine learning models, to use machine learning inbuilt machine learning models directly and run them. That is what scikit-learn is used for. Um, okay, one sec. Encapsulation, basically we are, so what does a class do? A class in Python brings the data and the code together. It binds them together. That is encapsulation, right? Uh, I'll just see the chat box for a minute. Okay. So I think mostly we are just trying to understand OOPS. Most of the concepts are around OOPS only. OOP is not OOP is not one of the main concepts that we want to focus on. OOP is just a, I was teaching Python, so I have touched upon OOPS, but it's not one of the main concepts. So we'll not be taking up a separate class or something on OOPS. But I'll definitely share some resources if you want to study OOPS in detail. So I think it is more important if you want to take up a software or a programming role in future. Um, all right. Int versus string in Python? That is a good question. So, what is a string? A string helps you to store text. A string helps you to store, alphabets and letters. So basically, an int just helps you store numbers. You cannot store text in int. So that is the difference between int and string in Python, right? Uh, I'll, I think I have a slide for this as well later on. Okay, I'll touch upon Python libraries here. What are some important libraries? First of all, what is a library? So when we are writing some code, right? When we are writing some, yes, C++ is an OOP concept. C is not an OOP concept. C++ is an OOP concept. So what are libraries? Libraries are, so suppose we are writing some code, and that code is, we know for a fact that this code will be used a lot of times in future also, right? uh, we have defined some piece of code which will be used again and again by us or by other programmers. So what Python did was Python created libraries for such codes. So it is a set of useful functions that eliminates the need of writing codes from scratch. So we don't need to write the same code again and again, right? We have that library, inbuilt library, which can from which we can directly import that code, right? So suppose I wrote some code for multiplication, and next time I want to write the code for multiplying three numbers, right? I have written the code for multiplying two numbers. Now I want to write the code for multiplying three numbers. Now what I'll do is, suppose there's a library for multiplying two numbers. I'll simply call that library, right? When I'm writing the code for multiplying three numbers, I'll simply call that library, and I'll just multiply it once instead of multiplying it three times or two times. So basically, a library helps you eliminate the need of writing codes from scratch. So these are built-in modules. These are built-in modules which are actually written in C. This is not an important thing, but these are modules that provide access to system functionality, such as file input output that would otherwise be inaccessible to Python programmers. So what Python programmers did was they stored the code in built-in in modules, and whenever some other person or anyone in the world requires the same piece of code, the person can simply call those libraries, simply import the library, right? If we say in terms of code, then it is import numpy. Like numpy is a library, so we import numpy or import scipy, import pandas. So we can simply import the library. And again, so this is, I think you can understand that it is a reusable chunk of code that you may want to include in your code, in your own piece of code or programs, projects, whatever. So what are the libraries that are there? For numbers, right? For numbers, for computations, maths, and even statistics, you can use NumPy, SciPy, and Pandas. NumPy is mostly around numbers. SciPy is a bit more complex than NumPy, and Pandas is again mostly around numbers. Then we have for machine learning, deep learning, and data science, and a lot of applications around artificial intelligence. You can use Keras, scikit-learn, TensorFlow, and PyTorch. So I've already told you that scikit-learn, I've already mentioned this name before here, that scikit-learn is a library for machine learning. And similarly, stats model is a library that is used for regular analysis using R style formulas. Now, this is something I didn't cover. This has a lot of complex terminology. So don't worry about that as of now. We'll do that when we cover R program, R language. So Keras, scikit-learn, TensorFlow, and PyTorch. These are machine learning and deep learning and data science libraries. So what this means is when you want to build a machine learning model, suppose a linear regression model, right? It is a machine learning model that is very widely used. So suppose you want to build a machine learning model, you can simply use this library. This library will help you build that model, right? Um, okay. These are two use cases, machine learning, data science, and computations. What is a third use case, third use of Python? That is visualization. Python is extremely helpful in visualizing the data, trying to identify the trends, trying to identify the patterns behind the data, plotting beautiful bar charts, graphs, any kind of graphs, box plots, pie charts, right? All of that. So Python helps you plot those charts. And what are the libraries which come handy in that scenario, in that use case? These are Matplotlib, Seaborn, and Plotly. And there are many, many other libraries as well. And I'll tell you some other names also in a bit. But these are, I think, some of the most widely used libraries: Matplotlib, Seaborn, and Plotly. Okay, so you know three use cases, three uses of Python libraries. What are other libraries? We have SymPy, we have IPython, we have all these other libraries as well. And each library, many of these libraries were not developed by the makers of Python or the creators of Python. These libraries were developed separately, right? So that is, at this point of time, we can simply utilize all the libraries in Python. What Python did was, so let me tell you the story of this particular library, Matplotlib. Now, if you know, MATLAB is a famous language. MATLAB was very popular a few years back, and there have been companies which have been working entirely, which have been using MATLAB a lot. So what Python did was, Python people are like very smart. They built a library using which gives you all the power from MATLAB, which gives you all the functionality that is available in MATLAB, right? And MATLAB, so now in Python, you can use all the functionality, almost all the functionality of MATLAB. And so they built a library called Matplotlib, which was basically, which basically took inspiration from MATLAB. So this gives you all the power of MATLAB within Python itself. So what Python does is it gives the best of many other languages within itself. So it brings the best of other languages on its own platform. So that is the story of Python and Matplotlib. Okay, where do I write Python code? I think there are many platforms to write code. We have Spider, PyCharm. Jupyter Notebook is, I think, one of the most widely used platforms to write Python code. I personally use Google Colab, where you can simply run your code on online, on the internet, on Google servers. So you will be using the RAM of Google servers. On the other hand, if you use Jupyter Anaconda, you will be using your own computer's RAM. So, but these are again very good options. And then we have other IDEs for writing Python code. Okay, I'll pause here for questions. Yes, VS Code is famous. Yes, VS Code is also very widely used. Um, Libraries and packages are not same actually. There's a minute difference. I think yes, I think it is true that libraries consist of packages, but we will have to check again. We'll have to check again. Um, Simulations. So I'm not sure what you mean by what you're asking here, but I think Python can be used for simulations as well. Okay, okay, right. I think this makes sense. No more questions from your end, I believe. Right. I'll move to the some details of libraries. So I'll just cover two or three libraries, but I've listed down six libraries here. So NumPy, right? I was talking about NumPy. So it introduces objects for multidimensional arrays and matrices. So basically, you can use the power of matrices in Python itself, right? So that is NumPy. And you can basically also define functions that allow to easily perform advanced mathematical and statistical operations. So all the mathematical and statistical parts you can use through NumPy. You can directly write formulas on NumPy, on Python, I mean, through this library. It also provides vectorization of mathematical operations on arrays. This is again advanced mathematics and matrices, which significantly improve the performance. Um, and NumPy is one of the most fundamental libraries. Even pandas and scikit-learn are very fundamental library. Not scikit-learn, but NumPy and pandas are fundamental libraries. Many other Python libraries are built on NumPy. When I share this PPT with you, you can visit this link. This is the official website of NumPy. Similarly, pandas adds data structures. So this is pandas is basically brings all the Excel functionality or the data frame series functionality, table like data functionality into Python. It provides tools for data manipulation, for changing the data, right? For changing the tables, for modifying the tables, rows and columns. So it provides tools for all of that: reshaping, merging, sorting, slicing, aggregation. These are tools which come under data man. These are practices. These are processes which come under data manipulation. For example, we can merge two tables or we can merge two columns, right? That this application is a data manipulation application. So this comes under data manipulation. And if we want to do this in Python, we can use pandas library for this. All right. It also helps you to handle missing data. So if you notice, this is mostly around data manipulation, handling data, and working with data, right? If you have a huge data set, then pandas library may help. Uh, okay. The third most important library is scikit-learn. This is not a fundamental library, but this is very important for machine learning algorithms. And this is the third slide which mentions this name, which definitely means that this will be somewhat important, right? there's a possibility that a machine learning engineer spends all of his day on with this library. So it provides machine learning algorithms. What are the examples of such algorithms? Classification, regression, clustering, model validation. We'll cover all of these algorithms in our machine learning lecture. So you need not worry about that. I already have the slides for this. So I know for a fact that we will be covering all these four concepts in detail. So don't worry about that. Next is the fact that it is built on NumPy, SciPy, and Matplotlib. So this particular library is built on three other libraries. So this also gives you an idea that Python libraries can help other libraries as well. So you can build advanced libraries on previous simple fundamental libraries like NumPy, Pandas, and so on. These are other libraries. I'll not dive deeper into these libraries. You can maybe read on your own. Okay, I'll cover this important concept called data frames. Now, data frame is just like a table, right? In Python, you can call a table a data frame. So it is a two-dimensional size mutable. I'll tell you the meaning of this in a bit. It is a two-dimensional size mutable tabular data structure. You understand that it is a tabular data structure. It is a structure in which you can arrange data in a table format, as you can see here, right? What is the meaning of size mutable? Mutable means editable. So you can edit the size of this particular data structure of a data frame. Basically, you can edit the size of this. There are some data structures in which you can not edit the size of the data, and I'll tell you that I will just give a sneak peek of this. Tuples is a data structure that are immutable, so you cannot change the size of the data structure. So if you have declared this tuple, if you have declared the size of this tuple, you cannot change the size. But a data frame helps you change the size of a data structure of this data frame, right? So data frames are basically data structures whose size can be changed. And you know very well that this is a column. These are columns, right? These are columns, and these are rows. This is a row. This is a row. And then what are missing values? We in Python we indicate the missing values using NaN. So wherever there's a missing value, Python automatically fills NaN there. And I think we've covered everything here. These are index labels. So zero is an index label. Indexing starts from zero in Python. Indexing in data frames starts from zero basically. So 0, 1, 2, 3. These are index labels. Okay. Um. Now, can anyone tell me which data frame? Which library in Python includes data frames?
Pandas.
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 Yes. And also tell me the reason. Also tell me how you figured this out. Or
I know a
how
little
did
bit
you
of
figure this
Python.
out? Like, sorry?
I already knew a little bit of
Okay,
Python.
you know
You
Python.
told something about actual type
Like I had
data
some
type.
previous idea about it.
Okay. By the word PD.
Sir, you said something about
Sorry?
actual. You said something about
Yes,
actual type
yes,
things
yes,
in
yes.
So you
That
Pandas
is
mentioned
correct.
library.
Yes,
using
yes, yes. And
exercise.
that is the
Yes, you said that data manipulation use pandas.
exactly perfect, perfect.
Data
And that was the answer I was looking for. So when I taught you pandas, right, I mentioned that many things related to data, manipulating data, handling missing data, right? I specifically mentioned the word NaN, which is helpful for handling missing data. So these things come under pandas, and that is why data frames also comes under pandas. And some people gave this reason that PD word helped you identify that this is pandas, which is correct, because we usually import pandas as PD, so that we don't need to write the entire word pandas again and again. So we use a short form for pandas, right? I think this makes a lot of sense, and this prepares you for some interview questions also. All right.